Hello, my fellow philosophers. Welcome to the first part of the categories by Aristotle. Um, so this is only going to be a part one because this book is one of the books that we really have to get in depth to because it's one of the most important works in material logic for philosophy. Right, and so let's get started. And so the categories by Aristotle focuses on the classification of terms, their usage, and the relationships between predicates, subjects, and definitions. So let's start. There are three types of naming, which is equivocal, univocal, and derivative naming. So equivocal naming is when things are named equivocally when they share the same name, but the definition associated with that name differs for each case. For example, I love KFC and I love my mom. Those two definitions of love are different. And so another example is both a real man and a figure in a picture can be called animal, but the definitions differ. The term animal is applied to both, but its meaning is not the same. So if one were to define animal for both, the definition for each would apply only to its specific case. Second, univocal naming. Things are named univocally when they share the same name and the same definition corresponding to that name. For example, right, the differentiae is predicated univocally, right? So when we say a man, or when we say that Socrates is rational, and humans are rational, the term rational, which is a differentiator which separates humans from other species, is the same in the sentence Plato is rational, right? And so another example would be like a man and an ox are both called animal univocally because the term animal and its definition apply equally to both. If one were to define animal for a man and an ox, then the definition would be identical in both cases. Third, derivative naming. So things are named derivatively when their name is derived from another name, though with a change in termination or form. For example, the term grammarian is derived from grammar, and the term courageous man is derived from courage. Furthermore, there is two forms of speech which is simple and composite. Simple forms of speech are simple expressions consisting of single terms like man, ox, runs, or wins. These terms, these simple terms, they don't contain any affirmation or negation, which means there's no such thing as being true or false within them, right? They only become that when, they become composite. And so composite forms of speech consist of composite expressions which consist of multiple terms combined into statements like the man runs or the man wins. Some entities are and then furthermore, some entities are predicable of a subject but are not present in a subject. This means something can describe a subject but doesn't actually exist inside of it. For example, human can describe a specific person like John, but human itself isn't inside of John, right? Being present in a subject means that an entity cannot exist independently of the subject it is in. Yet it is not the same as being a part of the subject. Secondly, some entities are present in a subject but are not predicable of a subject. This just means that something exists inside something else but it doesn't describe it. For example, whiteness exists in a white shirt, right? Because the color needs something extended for it to even exist, by the way. But you wouldn't say that this shirt is whiteness, right? Whiteness exists in a white shirt, but the shirt is not whiteness. Okay. So thirdly, some entities are both predicable of a subject and present in a subject. This means something both exists inside something and can also describe it. For example, knowledge exists in a person's mind, and you can also say grammar is knowledge. So it exists inside something and it could be predicated of. Fourthly, some entities are neither present in a subject nor predicable of a subject. This means something is just a standalone thing. It doesn't exist inside something else, and you can't use it to describe another thing. Example, primary substances, which is a specific person like John. He isn't inside anything the way a quality like whiteness is, and you don't use him to describe other things, right? Another example is the individual man or individual horse. And generally, that which is individual and has the character of a unit is never predicable of a subject. However, there may be exceptions where something individual is present in a subject, like a specific point of grammatical knowledge. When one entity is predicated of another, all entities predicable of the predicate are also predicable of the subject. So, predication works hierarchically, right? For example, man is predicated of an individual man, animal is predicated of man, and therefore animal is also predicable of the individual man. And so genera that are distinct and coordinate have different differentiae, which is just basically distinguishing characteristics that separate a species from another species. For example, the genus animal has differentiae such as with feet, two-footed, winged, or aquatic, and so the genus knowledge wouldn't be distinguished by these differentiae since they are irrelevant to its nature, right? Why would we ever have a differentiae like with feet applied to the genus knowledge? Would it make sense, right? And so genera with subordination, which is just when one genus is subordinate, which just means lower, by the way, in like a position or rank to another, they can share the same differentiae. For example, the greater, which is broader, genus is predicated of the lesser, narrower genus. And so therefore the differentiae of the greater genus also applies to the lesser genus. And so here's some important notes to take away from this, is that Aristotle emphasizes that predication works hierarchically. That is, if a predicate applies to a genus, it applies to all subordinate species. For example, like the genus animal has a predicate X, then lower species like tigers can also have that predicate. So tigers are X. For that's basically it. And genera can be distinct or hierarchical, and their defining characteristics differentiate, they differ accordingly. The relationship between entities is analyzed in terms of predication and presence, which just means that some entities are purely descriptive of a subject, others exist within a subject but do not describe it, like whiteness, remember, and some can do both while others do neither. And so here are the 10 categories. Really quickly, I have an image for you if you want to take a screenshot or take a screenshot of the slides. But non-composite expressions, which are basically the terms, signify one of the following categories. Substance. Primary substances. Substances are the most fundamental, remember. Examples include a man or the horse. Quantity. Examples include how much, blah, 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 2 cubits long or 3 cubits long. Quality is like whiteness or grammatical. Relation includes double, posterior, prior, right, or greater. Place includes like in the marketplace or in the lyceum. Time includes yesterday, last year, anoche, right? I mean last night in Spanish, right? Position examples, include lying or sitting, right? And state includes like shod or armed or like has clothes on, right? And action includes to lance or to cauterize or burning, hitting, right? Affection includes to be lanced or to be cauterized or being burned. Basically, you're receiving it, right? And so, properties of non-composite expressions, then again, I previously mentioned, they do not have any affirmation or negation, which just means there's no such thing as true or falsity within them. They gain meaning in statements when combined, though. So assertions made with these terms can be true or false, whereas the terms themselves, for example, man, white, runs, are neither inherently true nor false. Now for the big board topic. Substance. Primary substance, right? Aristotle defines this primary substance as that which is neither predicable of a subject nor present in a subject. For example, an individual man or horse. And then so secondary substances are species or genera in which primary substance are included. For example, the species man includes the individual man, the genus animal includes the species animal. So, primary substances are never going to be predicated of something else. They are never the predicate. However, secondary substances can be used as predicates because they define primary substances, right? But they differ from qualities. But note that species are closer to primary substance than genera. This is because a species provides a more specific and instructive account of an entity than its genus. For example, when you describe an individual man as man, which is species, it would be more precise than describing him as animal, a genus, right? You wouldn't say Tony is an animal. You would say Tony is a man, right? So, when something is predicated of a primary substance, both the name and definition of the predicate can apply to the subject. For example, man is predicated of an individual man. The definition of man as a rational animal also applies to the individual man. So Tony is a man. Man means rational animal. Tony is a rational animal. There you go. Things present in a subject. Typically, neither their name nor their definition is predicated of the subject. For example, white is present in a body and can be predicated. For example, this body is white, but its definition, which is a color perceived by light reflection, is not predicated of the body itself. And so then Aristotle then notes that everything else that isn't a primary substance is either predicated of a primary substance or present in it. For example, animal is predicated of man and thus also of an individual man. Remember, predication works hierarchically within Aristotelian philosophy. And color is present in body and thus in individual bodies. And so Aristotle holds primary substances to be the most fundamental and have the most fundamental ontology. And the reason he says this is because without primary substances, nothing else could exist. They are the ultimate subjects of predication and presence. They are the ultimate realities. Attributes and differentiate are predicated of substance but do not form their essence. And in the metaphysics, Aristotle claims that without substances, knowledge would become impossible. Right? Oh, and also in the metaphysics, Aristotle shifts his view and he says that substances are the what it was to be that thing, which is essence, right, or nature, the whatness of a thing, the what it was to be that thing. I don't know, Aristotle has some strange terms like being qua being, right? The what it was to be that thing, right? And so, note that substances don't admit degrees, so there is no hierarchy in primary substances or species. That just basically means like a man can't be more of a man than, like for example, John is not more of a man than Tom, right? And substances like a man or a horse are equally substances. There's no such thing as a man being more of a substance than a horse. They don't admit degrees. And they are equally primary. Secondary substances like species and genera are still considered substances because they define substances, right? Because to define an individual man, one needs to state his species, man, or genus, animal. For example, Tom is a man, or Tom is an animal. And attributes like white are irrelevant to the definition of a substance. So anything other than substance in the 10 categories, we would call those accidents, per accidents, right? They're not necessary. For example, man is per se, but white man is not per se. White man is per accident, right? Accidents are just unnecessary things, like they're not essential to a substance, right? It's not really their essence, basically. However, species and genera are subjects for attributes. Like a man skilled in grammar, the attribute applies to the individual species man and genus animal. Differentiate also is not present in a subject because terrestrial and two-footed are predicated of man, but are not present in man itself. So both the name and definition of a differentiator can apply to its subject. Substances and differentiator are always predicated univocally. For example, like humans are rational and Plato is rational, the differentiate rational has the same meaning in both. When used as predicates, we would say, sorry, I don't know why I put FFF. We say Socrates is a human or Plato is a human. Human means the same thing in both cases because it refers to their essential nature. Substances and differentiate are predicated in propositions where the subject is either an individual, which is a primary substance, or a species, which is a secondary substance. Note that primary substances cannot ever be predicated of anything. They are never the predicate, okay? But secondary substances like species are predicated of individuals, and genera are predicated of both species and individuals. Differentiae are predicated of species and individuals within the species, and so the definitions of species and genera are applicable to primary substances. The definition of a genus applies to species and individuals within the species. Then again, really, this is just another way of saying that predication works hierarchically. Okay. And so we need to know about the transitive predication rule. Anything predicated of a predicate will also be predicated of the subject. For example, humans are rational, Socrates is a human, therefore Socrates is rational. Recognize that? Deja vu. It sounds way similar to a syllogism, which it is basically. The definitions of differentiae apply to species and individuals, and the term univocal applies to entities that share both a name and a definition. Therefore, when substances or differentiae form predicates, they are univocally predicated. And so we need to know about the characteristics of substance. First, primary substances have no contrary, which just means that, for example, an individual man or animal cannot have an opposite. Similarly, species and genera have no contraries as well. There is no opposite of man or animal. This characteristic is not unique to substances because it is applicable to quantities as well. For example, there is no such thing as the opposite of 10. There is no such thing as the opposite of 2 cubits long. Secondly, substances do not admit degrees, and we will skip that because I've already explained what that means, which just means that nothing can be more of a substance than another substance. Third, substance can admit contrary qualities. For example, the same man can be white at one time and black at another, and the same man can be good at one time and bad at another. No other category besides substance can have this property. Please note that. Because, for example, a single color cannot be both white and black. A single action cannot be both good and bad. Okay? And fourthly, substances change to admit contraries. Substances change internally to adopt contrary qualities. You can also link this to Aristotle's theory of holomorphism, that substances both form and matter, the potentiality, and form the actuality are together, and the matter, which is potentiality, allows for this change. For example, that which was hot becomes cold by entering a new state. That which was good becomes bad through transformation. This internal modification is distinct from statements and opinions, which do not change from themselves. And also note that statements and opinions are not substances. And this is the end of part 1. Thank you.